Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And we've got some big news as far as data mining potentially found about the housing feature coming in the next expansion for Midnight. We have quality of life improvements coming to patch 11.1 to discuss. And we're going to talk about class balance because I think, the information that's been posted and shared on this post that I found is actually going to be very eye-opening and surprising to a lot of players. And if you want to make sure you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, then make sure to smash the subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. Now, player housing is something that a lot of players have been asking for. We got an iteration of it previously in Warlords of Draenor, being the garrisons, albeit they were not fully customizable. They were basically kind of just template plots that you could put existing predetermined buildings on, and they were found to be a very isolating experience, and so much so that they decided to not go forward with the feature in expansions since Warlords of Draenor. So for me, the biggest question about player housing is, how are they going to make it identifiably different than garrisons? How are they going to make it less isolating than garrisons, and how are they going to let player expression kind of blossom with this style of design? Because if it's just Garrisons 2.0, I think it's going to flop really fast. So I'm hoping that in this post, with what they've been able to find, it's going to kind of itch a little bit closer to seeing those types of details that are going to determine the likelihood, the success of this feature. So the clues that they have found in the latest Cataclysm PTR, an interesting file has been added called the Player Housing Constants Document.lua. With a name like that, this could reference a first look at the upcoming player housing system in the Midnight expansion, giving us any clues as to how the system may work. No details have been given about the system so far, so players have many questions about how the system may work, and there may be some answers here. Of course, as this is data mined on the Cataclysm Classic PTR, this file may be incorrect or out of date and possibly have nothing to do with this, but obviously we're super hyped about this. We want to figure out what's going on. So player housing categories. This file is set up in .lua, so we wanted to summarize some of the options. It seems that items in player housing can be categorized into different categories. Flags for interior and exterior. It would be really cool if we could take the PvP pennant rewards, which are a toy currently that puts a flag on your back, that a lot of players can't use because you can't even use them in instant PvP content. If you could put those pennants in your house as like little trophies for your PvP achievements and stuff like that, that would be really cool. But I'm having a feeling that this is probably just Horde Alliance, maybe your race, like Darnassus flag like that, something generic like that. But if they get extended into the PvP category rewards, I'd be really stoked about that. Model type, so what type of house? Interested to see how this is going to scale. Is it going to be kind of like a StarCraft like tier setup where you start off with like the little hatchery and then it upgrades into the hive type of deal, the same way the garrison was in a sense? Or is it just going to be completely open-ended? You can make any type of house that you want, any type of plot and landscape, because this doesn't really share a lot of information for that. For theme, they've got none, folk, rugged, generic, and opulent. These are very non-Warcraft centric sounding words. So this is either, I'm probably saying this is probably like incorrect data was reading this, because I feel like they would have called this like night elf or orc, or these words just seem really generic, unless they want it to be generic. For type, you can have floor, wall, ceiling, tabletop, it seems like. Housing exterior, component size, any small, medium, or large. So that seems like the scaling from like hatchery to hive, where you could have a smaller house and likely it's going to cost more or something like that, depending on how you want to scale the house up. It would be really sad if you couldn't afford to have a house in-game or IRL, but okay, so now we get the component theme human. So this is making it seem a little bit more real. Are you going to be able to have a human themed house as an Horde player? Can I buy a house in Elwynn Forest? Is that something can that happen? Because I think they're probably not going to let that happen, but maybe. You can add decor, it looks like that, with edit mode. It looks like they've got an edit mode for it, edit layout, bunch of like bug layout text files here. Door type, a narrow door or a large door. I'm building my house with narrow doors so Taurens can't get in. Okay, you know how annoying it's been as a Tauren on large mounts and running around throughout multiple expansions in Azeroth, and you don't fit through a single doorway. I'm designing my house that way too. It's happening. No Taurens are coming in, dude. Cosmetic doorway, wall or doorway, wall, floor, ceiling, stairs, or pillar. okay, so if you can add stairs or pillar, like if they can get this like The Sims, where you build a fully like customizable building, I think it's likely going to be really successful. But if it's just like the plots of land and you put it down and it's pre-built and it's just, I don't think people are going to be as excited for it. In summary, that's a lot of information, but what does that tell us? It looks like these are some of the details from this file. Player housing appears to be fully customizable mode similar to WildStar Final Fantasy housing. That's really important. Players seem to have the ability to enter an edit mode where they can edit, move, remove, and save their decor around the house. Decor items are separated into many different categories, including if they can be placed inside or outside, on what surface, i.e. floors, walls, ceiling, and their size. There's also options of doors, stairs, or even pillars. Items can be locked by other players, and there are error messages for note. What do you mean locked? Can people steal my stuff? I need to lock my doors? Are the streets of Azeroth not safe? And there are error messages for no plot, no rooms, and no house. This sounds like the start of a fully customizable player housing, which is exactly what a lot of people wanted. I mean, that's the only thing they want. If it's just templated plots of land, I really don't. I don't see anybody, wanting that for player housing. They want like the Sims level, Final Fantasy level customization for player housing. Like there's no doubt about that, moving to that. But those are good signs. I'm curious to see how they actually manage to execute on it and manage to make it work, because it seems like a very difficult task and a tall order to be able to achieve given WoW's engine and the age that it is. But they have been having interviews where Ian has been saying that they've been able to develop the engine and actually be able to do things they couldn't previously be able to do. So maybe it is actually possible. Now, in 11.1, one of their main goals is to remove the dependency of add-ons. We've seen that a lot in the dungeon and raid testing, where they've changed swirlies, made them just clear, identifiable circles. All of the mechanics are very identifiably visual. There's no clutter, there's no spam, and there's not really any necessity to have a weak aura pop a square in the screen, in the middle of your screen, instead of actually just looking at the animations that the monsters are using, which for the most part I've seen players have been giving like really big thumbs up as major improvements. In this next round of improvements, they're looking at new quests, events, and legends tabs on patch 11.1. So they're going to make the map a little bit more understandable. And they're also going to be showing you an event schedule. So if you're one of the casual kind of world players, you can track when is the next event coming up, at what time, and in what zone. You're able to track that all through the ledger in game, as opposed to possibly needing an add-on that was checking this type of content previous to that. So this is a nice little quality of life improvement for casual players. So you guys, it's not always about the top 1%. Okay, so they're looking at improving the map as well. Improving the quest tab, having the chapters laid out, having they had the legend previously, so you can see what different types of icons mean if you didn't know what they meant, because there's a lot more of them now than previously. So to me, this is a really good step forward, just looking at existing UI, making it easier to understand, making it easier to follow as far as scheduling, because that's probably like the biggest thing is people get lost on. I'm honestly surprised they haven't added any additional improvements to kind of like crafting gear and the crafting table, because that seems to be the main gripe from whenever I've seen new players start playing the game, is that they have no idea. They don't understand how it works at all. I've seen, even after watching Summit and Peekaboo PvP on retail together, Summit struggled even just finding the PvP vendor, let alone finding that there's an additional currency that leads to a separate version of an auction house where you can put up items to be crafted by other players, and the means and the reagents, and which ones do you need to go to, which ones are the best for PvP. I think that these could use a lot more direction in the game as far as showing players what's available to them and where they can go to find them, because if you have to watch my YouTube guide, which I have a guide on how to get the gear for PvP, the best gear for PvP, it's going to be difficult for anybody who's just like logging in and doesn't use YouTube, which I would assume is honestly the majority of players. So while this is nice, I think there's more steps that likely need to be taken. Now, this leads us to the final point of the video, final topic of the video, which is class balance, where I found this Reddit post. Blizzard should never add a new class or spec. They can't even balance the current ones. And they say that in quotations because in reality, the game is actually really balanced. Seems like they've gotten better at balancing over time as more classes were getting added. I cannot count how many times I've heard people here say the quote in the title. And they showed this image of class balance throughout all of the expansions. And I've already just kind of like clicked the wrong thing because everything's on dark mode, I suppose here. But in the top, you can see the Mythic raid, and you can see all the class bars are like pretty close to each other. And then you can see Classic, where, you know, Fury Warrior, I believe this is Fury Warrior, is just dominating everything. You know, it's not even close. And then even in Cataclysm, right? The class balance, because ideally all of these bars are the same basically. And then in Cataclysm, hey, it got slightly better. Season of Discovery still has a little bit of a bump, but it's still honestly even still more balanced than Classic was originally. So as far as class balance, the game is actually really well balanced. I think the issue honestly is that they're balancing classes around too many frames of content. So this is Mythic raid balance, but Mythic Plus. So in Mythic Raid, they balance the classes around single target, two target cleave, multi-target, and these types of scenarios. And the main focus is the bosses, and the bosses are built around single target, two target cleave, and multi-target. But in Mythic Plus, it's pretty much all AoE because, you know, predominant amount of your time spent is killing trash, which is mostly AoE. So the classes that AoE tend to be the, you know, the most desirable because you're just spending percentage-wise the most time AoEing in the dungeon. So there's an issue of balancing classes for Raid and then also keeping them balanced for Mythic Plus. And then there's the issue of obviously Arena and Battlegrounds. So you get something like Mistweaver, Monk, and Battleground Blitz, which is the best healer by far, but then we throw them over into Arena and they start to struggle a lot. And it's because their mobility, when it's based around an objective, is really powerful, but when there's no objective to play around, that mobility is a lot less desirable. So even despite that, the game is still really well balanced considering all the different frames, but I feel like they're not setting themselves up to succeed maximally in this sense, because they're only ever going to be able to hit the nail on the head with one of these. If Mythic Raid is balanced, it probably means Mythic Plus is not balanced. If Mythic Plus is balanced perfectly, then it probably means Raid's not balanced. If Arena is balanced, then it probably means Battlegrounds are not balanced. If Battlegrounds are balanced, then it probably means Arena is not balanced, and you're going to have to take a priority, or you go the middle ground, and then nobody's really happy with either of them. And really the only way around that is adding more tuning knob adjustments, right? They've already got PvP knobs and PvE knobs. You need like Battleground knobs, and you need Mythic Plus knobs, which they've started turning a couple of them, right? They've had some classes where AoE raid abilities are buffed by like 500% when they're not in a raid. That's an example of a non-raid tuning knob to try and help out those classes, and they've done it with some like major abilities, but not enough that I think you're going to get the type of balance that people are looking for in Mythic Plus. And you know, this last season for Mythic Plus has been really top heavy, and they've not really been able to hit that. But in PvP, with the PvP knobs, they can kind of do that, but there's still a little bit of a priority. We've seen some specs catch snares, like Death Knights getting nerfed because they were too strong at Battlegrounds, and then now they're much weaker in Arena. And those types of situations are going to happen when you don't have a way to delineate them, because they're all basically just separate instances, right? It's not this cohesive thing. Or you get Classic, where one thing is the best at this mode of the game, and one thing is the best at Battlegrounds, and one thing is the best at Arena or whatever else is available in the game and whatever expansion you're going for, and then nobody else can compete in those categories. And I've seen some debate. Some people like that. They like having it so it's like, this expansion had this class, this is the best Battleground class, and this was the best Arena class, this is the best Raid class. Some people like that. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you think trying to achieve balance so that all specs can be invited to content and, you know, not excluded from the LFG process just because your number isn't higher than another spec's number arbitrarily, given its kit or given whatever tuning adjustments that have been made to the classes? Or would you actually prefer the balance just to be 100% top heavy? This is the best class for Raid. You just stack it over and over and over. Best class for BG, etc. Let me know in the comments down below. But this is just some news information that I wanted to share with you that I found interesting. Thank you guys very much for watching the video. I appreciate your guys' support, and I will see you in the next one.